Blood and moonlight. The pain came in waves that threatened to drag Cassandra under, each contraction a tidal force that obliterated everything except the primal need to push. She braced her back against the freezing stone wall of her cell, her chains rattling with every agonized movement. The iron shackles around her wrists had rubbed her skin raw days ago, but that pain was nothing compared to the fire splitting her body in two. "Please!" she gasped into the darkness, her voice barely a whisper. "Someone! Anyone!" No footsteps answered. No guards came to investigate her cries. The Shadowmere dungeons stretched endlessly around her, a labyrinth of suffering where screams were as common as breathing. Her pleas dissolved into the oppressive silence, swallowed by stone walls that had absorbed centuries of despair. Another contraction seized her, and Cassandra bit down on her own arm to muffle the scream. The metallic taste of blood filled her mouth. Her wolf, dormant for months now, remained frustratingly silent within her, too weak from captivity and starvation to offer any supernatural healing or strength. She was utterly, devastatingly human in this moment, facing the most dangerous trial of her life completely alone. The thin prison shift they'd given her was soaked through with sweat and other fluids she tried not to think about. The single barred window high above let in only the faintest silver thread of moonlight, just enough to see the outline of her swollen belly and her trembling hands. She'd tried to prepare herself as best she could with the resources available, which meant nothing. No blankets, no clean water, no midwife or healer, just cold stone, rusted chains, and the very real possibility that she or her baby or both of them would die here in this forgotten cell. "You will not die," she told herself fiercely, even as tears streamed down her hollow cheeks. "Your daughter will not die. She has a destiny." The memory of her grandmother's voice echoed through her mind, as clear as if the old woman stood beside her. "The child born of your blood under a betrayer's moon will unite what has been broken. She will bridge the divide between high and low, between the pack-born and the forgotten. Guard her well, Cassandra." The prophecy lives in her veins. At the time, young and naive, Cassandra had thought it a beautiful story. Now, imprisoned on false charges of espionage, she understood the prophecy had painted a target on both their backs. Someone powerful knew about the child. Someone powerful enough to have her arrested, thrown into the Alpha King's own dungeons, and left to rot. The next contraction crashed over her with such intensity that her vision went white. Instinct took over, ancient, feminine, unstoppable. Her body knew what to do even if her mind reeled in terror. She bore down, channeling every remaining scrap of strength into this one desperate push. A tiny, outraged cry pierced the darkness. Cassandra's hands moved with trembling urgency, reaching for the slippery, impossibly small body that had just entered the world. She pulled her daughter to her chest, using the hem of her filthy shift to wipe the infant's face and mouth. The baby's cries grew stronger, a furious declaration of life that made Cassandra's heart explode with fierce, protective love so intense it was almost painful. "Hush, little moon," she whispered, pressing her lips to the baby's damp head. "I've got you. Mama's got you." The afterbirth came in a rush of fluid and tissue, and Cassandra used her last reserves of energy to tear a strip from her shift, to tie off and separate the umbilical cord. Her hands shook violently, but she managed. She managed because she had to, because this tiny, perfect creature depended entirely on her. In the meager moonlight, she examined her daughter. 10 fingers, 10 toes. A shock of dark hair plastered to her small skull, eyes that would probably be blue like her own, though it was too dark to tell for certain. The baby's cries had subsided to small mewling sounds as Cassandra arranged her against her skin, praying her own body heat would be enough to keep the infant warm. "Maya," Cassandra breathed, the name coming to her as naturally as breathing. "Your name is Maya. It means illusion in the old tongue, because they thought you would be my weakness." But you're my strength. You're everything. The hours that followed blurred together in a haze of exhaustion and vigilance. Cassandra dozed fitfully, jolting awake at every tiny sound Maya made, terrified the baby had stopped breathing. She guided Maya to her breast, weeping with relief when the infant latched on and began to nurse. Her body, pushed beyond all reasonable limits, somehow still produced milk for her child. But the cold was relentless. It seeped up from the stone floor, leached through the walls, turned the air itself into an enemy. Cassandra curled around Maya's small body, becoming a human shield against the elements. She whispered stories to keep herself awake, tales of noble wolves and courageous battles, of the moon goddess who watched over their kind, of a future where Maya would be free and loved and safe. One day passed, then two. Cassandra's strength ebbed like a tide going out, taking her awareness with it. She stopped being able to tell when she was asleep or awake. Fever set in, making her thoughts scatter and reform in strange patterns. Sometimes she thought she heard footsteps, but they always faded before reaching her cell. Sometimes she imagined her grandmother sitting beside her, humming lullabies. The bleeding wouldn't stop completely. Cassandra could feel the warm trickle of it, steady and dangerous. Infection had probably set in. She could smell it, sickly sweet beneath the other prison odors. Her body was shutting down, but she couldn't let go. Not yet. Not while Maya still needed her. On the third day, she heard the footsteps again. This time they didn't fade. They grew louder, purposeful, accompanied by the harsh flicker of torchlight in the corridor beyond her cell. Cassandra tried to sit up, tried to shield Maya more completely, but her body barely responded. She managed to turn her head toward the cell door as the footsteps stopped just outside. The torchlight grew brighter, flooding the cell with sudden, blinding illumination. Cassandra squinted against it, her free arm instinctively tightening around Maya's sleeping form. "By the goddess," a deep voice rumbled, rough with shock and something that might have been horror. "What in the name of—" The cell door exploded inward, the lock shattering under impossible force. A massive figure filled the doorway, backlit by torch fire, so that Cassandra couldn't make out his features. But she felt his presence like a physical force, waves of raw power rolling off him and filling the small cell. Then he stepped forward, and the torchlight caught his face. Cassandra had never seen the Alpha King in person, but there was no mistaking who stood before her. Thor Alderson commanded the Northern Territories with an iron fist, a ruler known for his strategic brilliance and absolute ruthlessness with his enemies. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders broad enough to block the doorway and arms corded with muscle. His face was all harsh angles and aristocratic lines, with a strong jaw shadowed by dark stubble and eyes the color of molten gold. Those eyes locked on hers, and the world stopped. The mate bond hit Cassandra like a physical blow, stealing what little breath she had left. It roared through her veins like wildfire, igniting every nerve ending, screaming at her to reach for him, to complete the sacred connection that bound wolves to their fated partners. Her dormant wolf surged to life for the first time in months, howling in recognition and desperate need. Mate, mate, mate. Thor staggered back a step, his hand flying to his chest. His golden eyes went wide with shock, then impossibly dark with an emotion Cassandra couldn't name. The air between them crackled with electricity, thick with the magnetic pull of a bond that refused to be denied. "No," Cassandra whispered, even as her traitorous body yearned toward him. "No, you did this." She tried to scramble backward, to put distance between them, but her body wouldn't cooperate. The movement jostled Maya, who let out a thin cry of protest. Thor's gaze snapped to the bundle in Cassandra's arms, and something in his expression fractured. "You're hurt," he said, his voice gone rough and strange. He moved toward her with careful deliberation, as if approaching a wounded animal. "You're goddess above. How long have you been here?" Don't touch us, Cassandra managed, clutching Maya tighter. Her vision swam alarmingly, dark spots dancing at the edges. You ordered this. Your beta, Marcus. He threw me in here. False charges. He said you wanted me silenced. Thor froze mid-step, and for a heartbeat his face went absolutely blank. Then fury ignited in those golden eyes, so intense Cassandra felt the temperature in the cell spike despite the cold. Marcus, Thor growled, and the word vibrated with barely leashed violence. Marcus! Footsteps thundered in the corridor outside, multiple sets, accompanied by shouted orders. A lean man with sandy hair and sharp features appeared in the doorway, flanked by guards. He took one look at the scene and went pale. Your Majesty, I can explain. Explain why my mate has been dying in my own dungeon? Thor's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. Explain why there is a newborn infant in a prison cell? Explain any of this, Marcus, and do it very carefully, because your life depends on your next words. My mate. The words rang in Cassandra's ears. Thor had claimed her aloud, in front of witnesses, with a possessiveness that should have terrified her. Maybe it would have, if she had any fear left to spare. But she'd spent it all in the last 3 days, and now there was only the bone-deep exhaustion of someone who had fought beyond their limits and had nothing left to give. Marcus's throat worked convulsively. Your Majesty, I received orders that this woman was a spy from the Shadow Council. The intelligence seemed credible. I acted to protect you. Credible intelligence about a pregnant Omega? Thor's lip curled back from his teeth in a snarl. Get out. Send healers immediately. Then confine yourself to quarters until I decide what to do with you. Marcus fled. The guards scattered. Thor turned back to Cassandra, and the fury in his expression melted into something gentler, but no less intense. I need to help you, he said quietly, dropping into a crouch a few feet away, making himself smaller, less threatening. Both of you. Will you let me? Cassandra wanted to refuse. Wanted to spit defiance at him and cling to her anger, because anger was safer than the treacherous hope unfurling in her chest. But Maya made another small sound, and Cassandra felt the last of her strength finally, truly giving out. Don't hurt her, she whispered. Whatever you do to me, please don't hurt my daughter. Thor's expression crumpled with something that looked almost like pain. Never, he said, and the word carried the weight of an unbreakable vow. I swear on my life, on my crown, on everything I am, no harm will come to either of you, not while I draw breath. The darkness at the edges of Cassandra's vision rushed inward all at once. She felt herself falling, felt Thor's arms catch her with impossible gentleness, felt Maya being carefully secured between them. His warmth enveloped her like a blanket, and the mate bond sang with relief and rightness. I've got you, Thor murmured against her hair. Both of you. I've got you now. Cassandra surrendered to the darkness, praying she hadn't just made the worst mistake of her life. When awareness returned, it came in fragments, soft sheets beneath her instead of cold stone, the scent of herbs and healing magic in the air, warmth, blessed, wonderful warmth, surrounding her like an embrace, and voices, low and urgent, somewhere nearby. The blood loss was severe, Your Majesty. Another few hours and we would have lost her. But you didn't. Thor's voice, hard and unyielding. Tell me she'll survive. With rest and proper nutrition, yes. Her wolf is weak but present. That will help with healing once we've addressed the immediate damage. The infection was extensive. We've cleaned and treated the wounds, but she'll need careful monitoring for the next several days. Cassandra's eyes fluttered open. She was in a bed, a real bed with actual pillows and clean linens. The room around her was large and airy, with high ceilings and tall windows that let in natural daylight. Nothing like the dungeon. For a disorienting moment she thought she might still be unconscious, dreaming of comfort while her body died in the dark. Then she remembered. Maya. Panic shot through her, giving her the strength to sit up despite her body's protests. "My baby," she gasped. "Where's my—" "Here." Thor appeared at her bedside instantly, moving with the preternatural speed of an alpha. He cradled Maya in his arms with surprising tenderness, the tiny infant looking impossibly small against his broad chest. "She's safe." The healers examined her. "She's healthy. Underweight and cold-stressed, but healthy. She's been sleeping mostly, waking to eat." Cassandra stared at the sight of the powerful Alpha King holding her daughter like she was made of spun glass. Maya slept peacefully, wrapped in soft blankets, her small face relaxed and peaceful. Something in Cassandra's chest cracked open at the image. "I fed her," Thor continued, his voice gone soft. "The healers showed me how to use a bottle. I hope that's... I hope you don't mind. You were unconscious, and she was hungry." The careful way he spoke, as if afraid of overstepping, caught Cassandra off guard. This was not the cold, ruthless king she'd heard stories about. This man looked at her daughter with wonder in his eyes and spoke to Cassandra like her opinion mattered. The mate bond thrummed between them, insistent and warm. Cassandra's wolf stirred, still weak but growing stronger by the minute in this safe, warm place. The animal wanted to trust him, wanted to accept the bond and everything it promised. But Cassandra's human side, shaped by betrayal and suffering, held back. "Why should I believe any of this?" she asked quietly. "How do I know this isn't some elaborate manipulation?" Thor moved closer, settling carefully on the edge of her bed. He angled Maya so Cassandra could see her clearly. "You don't," he admitted. "You have no reason to trust me. But I'm asking you to give me the chance to earn it. Your beta imprisoned me, on orders he claimed came from credible intelligence. How did that intelligence identify me as a threat? That's what I intend to find out." Thor's jaw clenched. "Someone wanted you silenced. Someone with enough influence to manufacture evidence convincing enough to fool my beta. I don't tolerate conspiracies in my territory, and I especially don't tolerate anyone who would target my mate." There it was again. My mate. The possessiveness in his tone sent shivers down Cassandra's spine. "I didn't ask to be your mate," she said, but the words came out weaker than she intended. "No," Thor agreed. "Fate rarely asks permission. But we are bound now, Cassandra. The goddess herself has tied our souls together. I won't force you to accept the bond, but I will protect you, both of you. That's not negotiable." Cassandra studied his face, searching for signs of deception. She found only fierce determination and something that looked almost like longing. The mate bond pulled at her, urging her to close the distance between them, to touch him and complete what had been started in that prison cell. She resisted, barely. "I want to hold her," she said instead. Thor's expression softened. He stood and carefully transferred Maya into Cassandra's waiting arms, his large hands steadying the infant with practiced care. When their fingers brushed, the contact sent sparks racing up Cassandra's arm. Thor inhaled sharply, golden eyes flashing with heat, but he stepped back, giving her space. Cassandra looked down at her daughter and felt tears prick her eyes. Maya was clean, warm, and sleeping peacefully. She'd been bathed and dressed in a soft white gown that probably cost more than Cassandra had earned in a year before her imprisonment. Her tiny fingers were curled into loose fists, and her chest rose and fell with steady breaths. "Thank you," Cassandra whispered, not looking up at Thor. "For taking care of her. You don't need to thank me." Thor's voice was rough with emotion. "She's yours. That makes her precious beyond measure." The simple statement undid something in Cassandra's carefully maintained walls. She blinked hard against the tears threatening to fall, focusing on Maya's peaceful face instead of the confusing tangle of emotions Thor's presence evoked. A knock at the door broke the charged silence. A woman entered, tall and regal, with Thor's same golden eyes and sharp features softened by feminine beauty. She carried a tray laden with food that made Cassandra's stomach clench with sudden, desperate hunger. "Freya," Thor said. Meet Cassandra, my mate. Freya's eyebrows rose, but she didn't look shocked. She set the tray on a nearby table and approached with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. So the rumors are already true. My brother works fast. She looked at Cassandra with genuine kindness. I'm Freya, Thor's sister, and the person who will actually make sure you're comfortable here, since my brother has the emotional intelligence of a brick. I'm standing right here, Thor growled. I know. That's why I said it. Freya winked at Cassandra before continuing. You must be starving. The healers said you need to eat slowly at first, but often. I brought soup, bread, and some fruit. Nothing too heavy. Cassandra's mouth watered at the sight of real food. Thank you, she managed. I'll hold the baby while you eat, Freya offered, already reaching for Maya with the confidence of someone accustomed to infants. Cassandra's arms tightened instinctively, a primal reluctance to let her daughter out of her sight. Freya noticed and immediately stepped back, hands raised in a gesture of peace. Or Thor can hold her, Freya said gently. Or she can stay with you. Whatever makes you comfortable. The understanding in Freya's voice, the lack of judgment or impatience, made Cassandra's throat tighten. She looked at Thor, who watched her with those intense golden eyes, waiting for her decision. You can hold her, Cassandra said quietly, but stay where I can see you. Thor nodded and carefully took Maya back, settling into a chair near the bed with his daughter. Their daughter, the mate Bond insisted, cradled against his chest. The sight of the fierce Alpha King transformed into a gentle protector made Cassandra's heart do complicated things she refused to examine. Freya brought the tray to the bed and helped Cassandra sit up more comfortably against the pillows. The first spoonful of warm soup tasted like heaven, and Cassandra had to force herself not to gulp it down. Her body, starved for so long, wanted to consume everything immediately, but she knew that would only make her sick. The healers say you've been imprisoned for 3 months, Freya said conversationally as Cassandra ate. During which time you were pregnant and received minimal care. That ends now. You'll stay here in the palace until we can guarantee your safety, and you'll have access to anything you need. Clothes, books, whatever helps you feel more at home. I'm a prisoner, Cassandra said flatly. You don't need to pretend otherwise. You're my brother's mate, Freya corrected firmly. That makes you family, and we protect family. Cassandra wanted to argue, but the soup was too good and she was too tired. She ate slowly, methodically, while Thor sat in comfortable silence with Maya. The domestic scene felt surreal after months of darkness and despair. When she'd eaten as much as her stomach could handle, Freya took the tray away and helped Cassandra lie back down. Exhaustion pulled at her despite having just woken up. The healers had said her body needed time to recover, and it seemed they were right. Thor stood and brought Maya back to her. Sleep, he said softly. I'll stay and keep watch. You don't have to, Cassandra protested, even as her eyes drifted closed. I know. I want to. The last thing Cassandra heard before sleep claimed her was Thor's deep voice, humming a lullaby she half remembered from childhood. The days blurred into a routine that felt both comfortable and suffocating. Cassandra woke each morning in the luxurious guest quarters, sunlight streaming through windows that had no bars but might as well have. Freya visited first thing, always cheerful, always bringing breakfast and conversation that felt genuine but couldn't erase the fact that guards stood outside Cassandra's door at all times. For her protection, they said. She wondered if they'd stop her if she tried to leave. She never tested it, not with Maya depending on her. Thor came every afternoon, like clockwork. He'd knock softly, wait for her permission to enter, always asking, never demanding, and then spend an hour or two sitting with her while Maya slept or nursed. At first, Cassandra kept their conversations clipped and neutral, answering his questions about her recovery with single words while her body tensed at his proximity. But Thor was patient in a way that unsettled her. He didn't push. He simply existed in her space, steady as a mountain, until gradually her shoulders relaxed and her responses grew longer. The healers say you're recovering well, Thor said on the fifth day, settling into the chair he'd claimed as his own. It sat near the window, positioned so he could see both Cassandra and the door, always alert, always protective. Your wolf is stronger. Cassandra nodded, adjusting Maya against her shoulder. The baby had just finished nursing and was making the small, satisfied sounds that never failed to make Cassandra's heart squeeze. I can feel her again. It's like coming back to myself after being only half alive. Something flickered in Thor's golden eyes, understanding perhaps, or shared pain. I've heard that imprisonment can sever a wolf's connection to their human half. That you maintained yours while pregnant and starved speaks to your strength. I didn't have a choice. Cassandra traced Maya's soft cheek with one finger. She needed me. That was stronger than anything else. Thor leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and Cassandra found herself noticing details she'd tried to ignore before. The way his dark hair fell across his forehead when he wasn't maintaining his kingly composure. The small scar bisecting his left eyebrow. The breadth of his shoulders under the simple linen shirt he wore during these visits. So different from the formal attire he donned for court. You're a remarkable mother, he said quietly. Maya is lucky to have you. The compliment lodged somewhere in Cassandra's chest, warm and uncomfortable. She wasn't used to praise. Before her imprisonment, she'd been nothing. A low-ranking wolf from a destroyed pack, scraping by with odd jobs and living on the margins of pack society. No one had ever called her remarkable. Any mother would have done the same, she deflected. No. Thor's voice carried absolute certainty. Not every mother has your courage. Not every mother would have survived what you endured and still had strength left to give to her child. Cassandra looked away, focusing on Maya's peaceful face instead of the intensity in Thor's gaze. The mate bond hummed between them, a constant pull she fought every moment. It wanted her to trust him, to accept him, to bridge the careful distance she maintained. Her wolf whined with longing, pressing against her consciousness with the desperate need to claim their mate. But Cassandra's human mind remembered the dungeon, the cold, the certainty that she would die alone. Someone had put her there, and until she knew who and why, she couldn't afford to trust anyone, not even the man fate had chosen for her. Have you discovered anything? She asked, changing the subject. About who imprisoned me. Thor's expression darkened. Marcus remains confined to quarters. I've had him examined by 3 separate magic users. They all confirm the same thing. He was under a compulsion spell. Subtle, expertly crafted. It would have made him susceptible to suggestion while leaving his personality intact enough that no one would notice the change. Cassandra's blood chilled. Someone used magic on your beta? Inside your own palace? Yes. The single word carried enough fury to make the air feel heavy. Which means someone with significant power and access. The spell was placed approximately 4 months ago, just before Marcus received the intelligence about you being a spy. 4 months. Cassandra had been 3 months pregnant then, just beginning to show. Someone had known. Someone had planned this with meticulous precision. What did the intelligence say? She asked. Specifically? Thor hesitated, and Cassandra read reluctance in the set of his jaw. That you were an agent of the Shadow Council, sent to infiltrate the palace and gather information about our defensive capabilities. That you posed a significant threat to the kingdom's security. But I'd never even been to the palace before. I was living in a village 2 territories away, working at a tavern. How could anyone believe I was a spy? The documentation was convincing. False records of you being seen with known Shadow Council operatives. Forged letters describing your mission. Even a fabricated background that painted you as a trained infiltrator. Thor's hands clenched into fists. Someone went to extraordinary lengths to make you disappear. The pieces clicked together in Cassandra's mind, forming a picture that made her stomach turn. The prophecy, she whispered. My grandmother told me about it before she died. A child born of my bloodline would unite the packs, bridge the divide between the powerful and the powerless. Someone knew about Maya. Someone wanted her dead before she could be born. Thor went very still. Tell me about this prophecy. So Cassandra did. She told him about her grandmother, a seer who'd lived on the fringes of society, speaking truths that made the comfortable uncomfortable. About the visions the old woman had shared on her deathbed. A child with eyes like the moon and power in her veins, born to change the rigid hierarchy that had governed wolf society for centuries. About how her grandmother had made Cassandra promise to protect the child, no matter what. That's why you were so afraid, Thor said slowly. When I found you. You thought I was part of the conspiracy. Your beta imprisoned me. Why wouldn't I think you'd ordered it? Because I would never. Thor cut himself off, seeming to recognize that his protests meant nothing against her lived experience. He stood and moved to the window, staring out at the gardens below. If this prophecy is real, if Maya truly has the power to reshape pack society, then she's in constant danger. The old families, the traditionalists who benefit from the current hierarchy, they would see her as a threat. The Shadow Council, Cassandra murmured. That's what they call themselves, isn't it? The wolves who want to maintain the old ways? Among other things. Thor's voice had gone cold. They've been a thorn in my side for years. I've tried to implement reforms, to create more equality between high and low-ranking wolves. They've fought me at every turn. But this, using compulsion magic on my own beta, imprisoning a pregnant woman, attempting to murder an infant, this is an act of war. The venom in his words should have frightened Cassandra. Instead, she felt something loosen in her chest. Thor's anger wasn't directed at her or Maya. It was directed at the same people who'd tried to destroy them. What happens now? She asked. Thor turned back to face her, and the determination blazing in his golden eyes made her breath catch. Now I find every single person involved in this conspiracy and make them regret ever touching what's mine. The possessiveness in that last word sent shivers down Cassandra's spine. I'm not. You are. Thor crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just short of touching distance. The mate bond crackled between them, nearly visible in its intensity. You can fight it, Cassandra. You can refuse to acknowledge it. But it doesn't change the truth. You and Maya are mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to defend against anyone who would harm you. The goddess herself bound us together, and I will spend every day earning the right to stand at your side. Cassandra's heart hammered against her ribs. She wanted to argue, to maintain her walls, but the raw sincerity in Thor's voice stripped away her defenses. You don't even know me, she whispered. Then let me. Thor slowly, carefully, reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The brief contact made electricity arc between them, and Cassandra gasped. Let me know you, Cassandra. Let me prove that I'm not your enemy. She should pull away, should remind him that she'd only been out of his dungeon for 5 days, that trust couldn't be built so quickly, that her entire life had taught her that powerful men took what they wanted and discarded what they didn't. But Maya chose that moment to make a small sound, and Thor's entire expression melted into tenderness as he looked at the infant. May I? He asked, holding out his hands. Cassandra found herself nodding, transferring Maya into Thor's arms. He held her with practiced ease now, having spent hours each day learning her rhythms and preferences. Maya settled against his broad chest with a contented sigh, one tiny fist curling into his shirt. The sight of them together, this powerful alpha king transformed into something gentle by her daughter's presence, made Cassandra's carefully maintained walls crack just a little wider. She trusts you, Cassandra said softly. Thor looked up, pinning her with those intense golden eyes. But do you? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Cassandra opened her mouth to answer, but a sharp knock interrupted whatever she might have said. "Your Majesty." A guard's voice came through the door, tight with urgency. "We have a situation. The perimeter wards have been breached." Thor's expression went from tender to lethal in a heartbeat. He carefully handed Maya back to Cassandra. "Stay here," he commanded, all traces of the gentleman vanishing behind the Alpha King's authority. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except Freya or me." Fear spiked through Cassandra's chest. "What's happening? I don't know yet." Thor strode to the door, then paused and looked back at her. "But I promise you, Cassandra, no one gets through me to reach you. No one." Then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him. Cassandra stared at the wooden barrier, her arms tightening around Maya, and tried to ignore the way her wolf howled with the need to follow their mate into danger. The attack came 2 hours after sunset. Cassandra was pacing her rooms, too anxious to sit still, when she heard the first sounds of combat echoing through the palace corridors. Snarls, shouts, the meaty thud of bodies hitting stone. Maya fussed in her arms, picking up on her mother's tension, and Cassandra forced herself to hum a soothing melody even as her heart raced. She'd locked the door as Thor ordered, and 2 guards stood outside. She'd heard their low voices earlier. But now those voices had gone silent, and that silence was somehow worse than the sounds of fighting. A scream pierced the air, abruptly cut off. Cassandra backed away from the door, her eyes darting around the room for weapons, for escape routes, for anything that might help her protect Maya. The windows were too high to jump from safely. The fireplace poker was her only option for a weapon. Footsteps approached the door, slow, deliberate, not the confident stride of Thor or the lighter steps of Freya. The door handle rattled. Once. Twice. "I know you're in there, little prophet's daughter." A man's voice, smooth and cold. "We've come for the child. You can make this easy or difficult, but the outcome will be the same." Cassandra's blood turned to ice. She clutched Maya tighter, backing toward the far corner of the room. Her wolf surged forward, lending her strength she shouldn't have had so soon after childbirth. If they wanted Maya, they'd have to go through her. "You've made a mistake coming here," she called out, keeping her voice steady despite her terror. "The Alpha King knows about your conspiracy. You can't silence the prophecy by killing one baby. Can't we?" The voice sounded amused. "You're still weak from your imprisonment. The king is occupied elsewhere. We made sure of that. And your daughter is so very small, it would be over quickly." The door exploded inward, ripped from its hinges by supernatural strength. 3 figures entered, 2 men and a woman, all dressed in dark clothing that absorbed the lamplight. The woman's eyes glowed with feral amber, her wolf riding close to the surface. "Last chance," the woman said. "Give us the child, and we'll let you live." "Never." Cassandra set Maya down in the corner, placing her own body between the infant and the intruders. Her wolf surged forward, fangs elongating, claws extending. She might die here, but she would make them work for it. The first man lunged. Cassandra met him mid-leap, her claws raking across his face. Blood sprayed hot across her skin. He howled and stumbled back, but the second man was already coming at her from the side. His fist caught her ribs, cracking bone, sending her crashing into the wall. Pain exploded through her torso, but Cassandra forced herself upright. The woman was moving toward Maya now, ignoring Cassandra in favor of the easier target. Red haze filled Cassandra's vision. She threw herself at the woman with a mother's desperate fury, teeth finding purchase in the woman's shoulder. The woman shrieked and tried to shake her off, but Cassandra held on, tasting blood, feeling her own injuries, screaming but not caring, not when Maya was in danger. The first man recovered and grabbed Cassandra by the hair, yanking her back hard enough to tear out strands. They were going to win. Cassandra knew it with terrible clarity. She was too weak, too outnumbered. They would kill her and take Maya, and the prophecy would die before it could be fulfilled. Then the room filled with a roar that shook the windows in their frames. Thor exploded through the doorway, and he was magnificent and terrible. His eyes blazed pure gold, his wolf fully merged with his human form, giving him speed and strength that turned him into a living weapon. The first assassin died before Cassandra even saw Thor move. One moment the man was reaching for her, the next his throat was torn out, and he was crumpling to the floor. The woman tried to run. Thor caught her by the ankle and dragged her back, his hand closing around her throat. "Who sent you?" he snarled, and his voice was barely human. The woman clawed at his hand, unable to speak, eyes bulging. Thor's grip didn't loosen. "Answer or die." "Shadow." "Counsel," the woman choked out. "Orders from Aldrich. The child, the prophecy, can't be allowed." Thor's hand twisted. The sickening crack of breaking bone echoed through the room, and the woman went limp. He dropped her body like trash and turned to the last assassin, who stood frozen in terror. "Run," Thor said softly. "Run back to your master and tell him what happens to anyone who threatens my mate and child. Tell him I'm coming for every last one of you. Tell him death will be a mercy compared to what I'll do when I find him." The man fled. Thor let him go, his attention already shifting to Cassandra. She was slumped against the wall, cradling her broken ribs, but her eyes were locked on Maya. The baby was wailing now, frightened by the violence but unharmed. Thor moved to Cassandra with careful urgency, his touch impossibly gentle despite the blood coating his hands. "Let me see," he murmured, but Cassandra shook her head. "Maya first. Make sure she's fine. I can hear her heartbeat, strong and steady." "But you're injured." Thor's face was drawn with concern and fury. "Let me help you." Cassandra finally nodded, wincing as Thor carefully probed her ribs. At least 2 broken, maybe 3. Her vision swam, shock setting in now that the immediate danger had passed. But she'd protected Maya. That was all that mattered. "Healers!" Thor bellowed, and within moments the room filled with people. Freya appeared, taking Maya with gentle hands and soothing words. The healers descended on Cassandra with herbs and magic, knitting bone and tissue back together with their arts. Through it all, Thor never left her side. His hand found hers and held tight, anchoring her through the pain. And when Cassandra's wolf finally settled, satisfied that their mate had protected them, she squeezed back. "Thank you," she whispered. Thor's expression crumbled. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her blood-stained knuckles. "I almost lost you. If I'd been even a minute slower. But you weren't." Cassandra reached up with her free hand, surprising herself by touching his face. "You saved us." Something shifted in that moment. The walls Cassandra had maintained so carefully began to truly crack. She'd seen Thor at his most dangerous, witnessed the full extent of his deadly power, and instead of fearing him more, she felt safe, protected, cherished. The mate bond sang between them stronger than ever, and for the first time, Cassandra didn't fight it. Thor seemed to sense the change. His eyes widened, then filled with an emotion so intense it stole Cassandra's breath. "Cassandra," he said, her name a prayer on his lips. "I still don't trust easily," she told him, needing him to understand. "And I still have questions. But I believe you'll protect us. I believe you're not my enemy. I'll spend every day proving you're right." Thor rested his forehead against hers, careful of her injuries, and Cassandra felt tears prick her eyes at the tenderness in the gesture. Freya cleared her throat delicately. "As touching as this is, we need to move you both. Now. This room isn't secure anymore, and if there's one assassination team, there could be others." Thor nodded, reluctantly pulling away from Cassandra. "My private chambers. They have wards that predate the palace itself. No one can breach them without my explicit permission." "I can walk," Cassandra started to protest, but Thor simply scooped her up in his arms, mindful of her ribs. "Humor me," he said, and there was something vulnerable beneath the command. So Cassandra let herself be carried through the blood-stained corridors of the palace, Freya following with Maya, guards surrounding them in a protective formation. And when they reached Thor's private wing, a suite of rooms that radiated power and ancient magic, Cassandra didn't protest when he carried her straight to his massive bed and settled her among pillows that smelled like pine and winter storms. "Rest," Thor commanded softly. "I need to meet with my war council, but I'll have guards at every entrance. Freya will stay with you." "What about Marcus?" Cassandra asked, suddenly remembering the beta. Thor's expression was grim. The healers broke the compulsion spell. "He's devastated by what he was made to do. When I return, we'll need to discuss what comes next. But for now, sleep. You're safe here. I swear it." Cassandra believed him. As she watched Thor leave, his shoulders set with lethal purpose, she realized she was beginning to trust him in ways that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Freya settled into a chair near the bed, Maya asleep in her arms. "He's different with you," she said softly. "I've never seen my brother like this. Afraid, yes, but also hopeful. You're good for him." Cassandra didn't know how to respond to that, so she simply closed her eyes and let exhaustion pull her under, secure in the knowledge that for the first time in months, she and Maya were truly protected. The night was deep when Cassandra woke to find Thor sitting beside the bed, watching her with an expression that made her heart skip. Maya slept in a bassinet nearby, and Freya had apparently retired to an adjoining room. "Couldn't sleep?" Cassandra asked softly. Thor shook his head. "Every time I close my eyes, I see them attacking you. I see what could have happened if I'd been slower." His voice roughened. "I've faced down armies, Cassandra. I've fought in wars and killed more enemies than I can count. But the thought of losing you and Maya, it unmans me." Cassandra sat up carefully, her ribs still tender but healing. The mate bond pulled at her, urging her closer. "We're here. We're safe. For now." Thor stood and began to pace, a caged predator. "But the Shadow Council has declared war, whether officially or not. Aldrich, he's their leader, one of the old blood alphas who despises everything I've tried to build. He'll send more assassins. He'll use every resource at his disposal to kill Maya before she can fulfill the prophecy." "Then we fight back," Cassandra said with more confidence than she felt. "You said you've been implementing reforms. We accelerate them. We expose the conspiracy. We show the other packs that the Shadow Council is willing to murder infants to maintain their power." Thor stopped pacing and looked at her with something like wonder. "You're thinking like a Luna," he said softly. The title sent a thrill through Cassandra. Luna, the Alpha's mate, the female leader of the pack. She'd never imagined herself as anything so important. But looking at Thor's face, at the hope and admiration in his golden eyes, she felt something shift inside her. "Tell me about them," she said. "About your enemies. If I'm going to be part of this fight, I need to understand what we're facing." So Thor pulled the chair closer and began to talk. He told her about the Shadow Council, 7 alphas from ancient bloodlines who controlled vast territories and resources. About Aldrich, the eldest and most powerful, who viewed Thor's reforms as an attack on the natural order. About the decades of political maneuvering and subtle sabotage that had characterized their conflict. "I've been trying to change things gradually," Thor admitted. "Create opportunities for low-ranking wolves to advance based on merit rather than birth. Establish laws that protect the vulnerable, but every step forward has been met with resistance. They see equality as weakness." "And now they see Maya as a threat," Cassandra said slowly, "because the prophecy suggests change is coming whether they accept it or not." "Exactly." Thor reached out and took her hand, the simple contact sending warmth through her. "Which is why I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." Cassandra braced herself. "What?" "The mark on your shoulder. The birthmark. May I see it?" Cassandra tensed. The mark was something her grandmother had always told her to keep hidden, a brand that identified her bloodline to those who knew what to look for. But if Thor needed to understand, if it would help protect Maya, she slowly pulled down the collar of her nightgown, revealing the silver crescent moon that marked her left shoulder. It shimmered faintly in the lamplight, and Thor's breath caught. "The moon prophet's mark," he whispered, reaching out to trace it with gentle fingers. His touch made Cassandra's skin tingle, the mate bond singing at the contact. "My grandmother told me stories about the prophet's line, that they carried the goddess's own blessing in their blood, that their children would be born with gifts that could change the world." "My grandmother said the same thing," Cassandra admitted. "She had the mark too. And the visions. She knew things before they happened, saw paths that others couldn't." She hesitated, then added, "She saw you." Thor's hand stilled. "What?" "Before she died, she told me I would meet my mate in the darkest moment of my life, that he would be a king with storm in his eyes and winter in his heart, but that his love would burn like summer fire." Cassandra met Thor's gaze, seeing her own wonder reflected in his expression. "She said he would help me change everything." "Then I'll do everything in my power to make her prophecy true," Thor said roughly. His hand moved from her shoulder to cup her face, and Cassandra leaned into the touch despite herself. "Cassandra, I know we've only known each other for days. I know you have every reason not to trust me, but I need you to know." A thin cry interrupted him. Maya was waking, hungry and indignant about it. Thor immediately pulled back, and Cassandra felt the loss of his warmth like a physical ache. She moved to the bassinet, lifting Maya with practiced ease. "I should feed her," she said unnecessarily. "Of course." Thor stood, but he didn't leave. "May I stay? I'll turn away if you prefer privacy." Cassandra considered, then found herself nodding. "You can stay, just perhaps look at something else for a moment." Thor moved to the window, his back courteously turned while Cassandra arranged Maya to nurse. Once the baby was settled and Cassandra had draped a blanket for modesty, she told him it was safe to look. Thor returned to his chair, but his eyes stayed carefully on Cassandra's face. "You're a natural at this," he observed. "Being a mother." "I'm terrified every moment," Cassandra admitted, "that I'll do something wrong, that I won't be enough to protect her." "You're more than enough." Thor's voice carried absolute conviction. "You kept her alive in impossible circumstances. You fought 3 trained assassins while injured. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Cassandra, and Maya is lucky to have you." The praise made Cassandra's throat tight. "You barely know me," she protested weakly. "Then tell me more. Help me know you better." Thor leaned forward, elbows on his knees, giving her his complete attention. "Tell me about your life before the dungeon, about who you were." So Cassandra did, haltingly at first, then with growing confidence, she told him about her childhood in a small pack that was destroyed in a territorial war. About her grandmother raising her alone, teaching her the old stories and the old ways. About losing her grandmother to illness 2 years ago and drifting through various territories, never quite belonging anywhere until she'd settled in that village and found work at the tavern. "I was invisible," she said softly. "Just another low-ranking wolf trying to survive. When I discovered I was pregnant, I thought—" She trailed off, remembering those early days of fear and confused joy. "The father wasn't my mate. He was just someone passing through, and I never saw him again after that night. I knew raising a child alone would be hard, but I wanted her anyway. I wanted Maya more than I'd wanted anything in my life." Thor's expression had gone carefully neutral. "The father, did you love him?" "No." Cassandra met his eyes steadily. "It was a moment of loneliness, nothing more. I don't even remember his name. But I've never regretted it, because it gave me Maya." Something in Thor's shoulders relaxed. "I'm glad," he said quietly. "Not that you were alone, but that your heart isn't tied to someone else. Is that selfish? Maybe." Cassandra felt a smile tug at her lips despite herself. "But I understand it. The mate bond is demanding. That's putting it mildly. Thor's laugh was rueful. Every instinct I have screams at me to claim you, to complete the bond, to never let you out of my sight. But I know you need time. I know trust has to be earned. He paused, then added softly, I just hope I'll have the chance to earn it. You're already earning it, Cassandra heard herself say, slowly. But you are. The look Thor gave her was so full of longing and hope that Cassandra had to look away, focusing on Maya instead. The baby had finished nursing and was drowsing against her chest, milk-drunk and content. I should tell you something too, Thor said after a moment. About my past, about why I've been alone for so long. Cassandra's attention snapped back to him. She'd wondered about that, wondered why a powerful, handsome alpha king had remained unmated well into his 30s. Thor stood and moved to the fireplace, staring into the flames as he spoke. I was betrothed once, 20 years ago. Her name was Alara, and she was beautiful and clever, and from a family whose alliance I needed. I thought I loved her. His voice went flat. I was wrong. What happened? Cassandra asked gently. She was working with my enemies, feeding them information, sabotaging my efforts to reform the pack laws, plotting my assassination so her secret mate could take the throne. Thor's hands clenched at his sides. I discovered the truth the night before our mating ceremony. She tried to kill me herself when she realized I knew. Cassandra's heart clenched. Thor, I executed her for treason. He turned to face her, and the pain in his eyes was devastating. And I swore I would never open my heart to anyone again. That I would rule alone, that duty would be enough. For 20 years, I kept that vow. I've had lovers, but never let anyone close. Never trusted anyone enough to risk that kind of betrayal again. Until the mate bond, Cassandra said softly, understanding. Until you. Thor moved back to her side, dropping to his knees beside the bed so they were eye level. The goddess chose you for me, Cassandra. Gave me a mate I never sought, but now cannot imagine living without. And I'm terrified. Of what? That I'll fail you. That I won't be able to protect you and Maya from my enemies. That you'll never be able to fully trust me because of what was done to you. Thor's voice cracked slightly. That I'll lose you before I ever truly have you. Cassandra set the sleeping Maya in her bassinet, then turned back to Thor. Acting on instinct, she reached out and cupped his face with both hands, feeling the slight rasp of stubble against her palms. You won't lose us, she said firmly. And you won't fail us. I see how hard you're trying, Thor. I see your dedication and your strength and your gentleness with Maya. You're earning my trust with every action, every word, every moment you respect my boundaries. Thor's eyes closed, and he turned his head to press a kiss to her palm. The gesture was so tender, it made Cassandra's heart ache. I don't deserve you, he whispered against her skin. Maybe not, Cassandra agreed, and felt him smile. But fate doesn't ask what we deserve. Thor opened his eyes, and the emotion blazing in them stole Cassandra's breath. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned in. Cassandra's heart hammered as the distance between them closed to inches, then mere centimeters. She could feel his breath on her lips, could smell pine and winter storms, and something uniquely Thor. The mate bond roared to life, urging her to close that final gap, to taste him, to begin the claiming that would bind them irrevocably. But fear rose up at the last moment. Fear of being vulnerable, of being hurt, of losing herself in someone else. Cassandra turned her head at the last second, and Thor's lips brushed her cheek instead of her mouth. He went absolutely still, then slowly pulled back. The disappointment in his eyes nearly broke her, but he didn't push, didn't demand. He simply stood, carefully schooling his expression into something more neutral. I'm sorry, Cassandra whispered. I want to, but... Don't apologize. Thor's voice was gentle despite the strain she heard in it. You're not ready. I understand that. I'll wait, Cassandra. However long it takes, I'll wait. What if I'm never ready? The question escaped before she could stop it, raw and honest. What if I'm too broken to complete the bond? Thor moved back to her, taking her hands in his. Then I'll love you broken. I'll spend forever showing you that you're safe with me, that I'll never hurt you the way you've been hurt before. And if you never want to complete the bond, if you want to keep that part of yourself protected, then I'll accept that too. Having you in my life at all is more than I ever expected, Cassandra. I won't demand more than you can give. Tears spilled down Cassandra's cheeks. That's not fair, she said, her voice breaking. You deserve a mate who can give you everything. I deserve the mate the goddess chose for me, and she chose you. Thor wiped her tears away with his thumbs, his touch infinitely careful. So you're exactly what I deserve, exactly what I need. Don't doubt that. Cassandra pulled him close, pressing her face against his chest, and Thor's arms came around her immediately. They stood like that for long moments, neither quite ready to let go, until Maya's soft breathing was the only sound in the room besides their own hearts beating in tandem. Will you stay? Cassandra asked softly. Tonight. Just stay here. I feel safer when you're close. Thor's arms tightened briefly before he released her and helped her back into bed. I'll stay as long as you want me, he promised. He settled into the chair beside the bed rather than joining her under the covers, respecting the boundaries she still needed. Cassandra reached out and took his hand, needing the connection. Thor's fingers laced through hers, and the mate bond hummed with contentment at the simple contact. Tell me something happy, Cassandra requested as her eyes drifted closed. Something about your childhood, before everything got complicated. So Thor began to speak, his deep voice washing over her in soothing waves. He told her about growing up wild in the palace forests, about his sister Freya teaching him to climb trees, about his mother who'd died too young but had filled his early years with love and laughter. Cassandra fell asleep to the sound of his voice and the warmth of his hand in hers, and for the first time since her imprisonment, she didn't dream of dungeons and darkness. Instead, she dreamed of winter storms that turned to summer sunshine and a king who learned to smile again. The war room hummed with controlled chaos. Maps sprawled across the ancient oak table, marked with strategic positions and enemy holdings. Alpha representatives from 3 allied packs stood shoulder to shoulder with Thor's most trusted warriors, their faces grim as they absorbed the battle plan. But it was Thor himself who dominated the space, a figure of coiled violence barely restrained, his golden eyes burning with cold fury that made even seasoned warriors step back. The Blackwood Fortress, Thor said, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversation like a blade. Marcus, show them. Marcus stepped forward, his face haggard from days of magical interrogation and the guilt of his unwitting betrayal. The compulsion spell had been broken, but the memory of what he'd done, imprisoning his king's mate, nearly causing her death, clearly haunted him. He placed markers on the map with trembling hands. The Shadow Council's stronghold is here, deep in the Blackwood territory. 3 rings of defenses, outer perimeter guards, secondary magical wards, and the inner sanctum where the council meets. His finger traced a path through the marked positions. They're holding Lady Freya in the eastern tower. And Cassandra, his voice caught. They have her in the ritual chamber beneath the main hall. Thor's hands clenched on the table's edge hard enough that the wood groaned. The incomplete mate bond tore at him constantly now, a physical agony that intensified with every hour Cassandra remained in enemy hands. It felt like something vital had been ripped from his chest, leaving a gaping wound that wouldn't heal until he had her back. His wolf raged beneath his skin, demanding he shift and tear through everything between him and his mate. The ritual, he growled. Tell me again. Marcus swallowed hard. They planned to use Cassandra's blood, the prophet's bloodline, to break the prophecy. There's an ancient dark ritual that can sever a magical lineage, prevent any gifts from passing to descendants. It requires. He paused, clearly not wanting to continue. Say it, Thor commanded. It requires the death of the primary bloodline carrier, and it must be completed during a lunar eclipse, which occurs tonight at midnight. Marcus looked up, meeting Thor's eyes. Your Majesty, I'm sorry. If I'd been stronger, if I'd recognized the compulsion, you're here now, and you've given us what we need. Thor's voice gentled slightly. You'll have your chance to make amends, but Marcus, if we don't reach Cassandra before that ritual begins, your guilt won't matter. Nothing will matter. The assembled alphas shifted, exchanging glances. Alpha Ronan of the Northern Ridge Pack, a grizzled veteran with scars mapping his face, spoke up. Your Majesty, with respect, we can breach the fortress. My scouts confirm their defenses are strong but not impenetrable. But the timing. He gestured to the map. It's a 3-hour journey to Blackwood, even at full wolf speed. That gives us less than an hour once we arrive to locate and extract your mate before midnight. Then we don't waste time talking about it. Thor straightened, and power radiated from him in waves. We leave now. Alpha Ronan, your pack takes the western approach. Alpha Selene, your wolves handle the eastern defenses and secure my sister. Alpha Marcus will lead the central assault with my elite guard. I'm going straight through to the ritual chamber. Alone? Selene, a sleek woman with silver-streaked hair, raised an eyebrow. That's suicide, even for you. Then I'll die getting to her. Thor's voice carried absolute conviction. But I won't leave Cassandra in their hands another moment. The mate bond. He cut himself off, jaw clenching against the pain that even speaking of it caused. She's suffering. I can feel it through our connection. Every second we delay is another second she's in agony. No one argued further. They'd all seen the change in their king since finding his mate, the way his legendary control fractured whenever Cassandra's safety was threatened, how his cold strategic mind gave way to primal protective fury. The mate bond had transformed Thor from a calculating ruler into something far more dangerous, a male with everything to lose. What about the child? Ronan asked carefully. Maya, she's still at the palace, protected by every ward and warrior I could spare. Thor's expression softened fractionally at his daughter's name. She's safe. I made Cassandra a promise that no harm would come to Maya, and I intend to keep it. But she needs her mother, and I need... He trailed off, then shook his head sharply. We move out. Now. The war room emptied in a controlled rush, warriors streaming toward the palace courtyard where their packs waited. Thor paused only long enough to check on Maya one final time, finding her asleep in the heavily warded nursery with 4 guards standing watch. He pressed a kiss to her tiny forehead, breathing in her innocent scent. I'll bring your mother home, he whispered. I swear it. Then he was running, bursting through the palace doors and shifting mid-leap into his massive wolf form. His transformation was seamless. One moment a man, the next a creature of fur and fang and lethal grace. His wolf was larger than any other, coat black as midnight with eyes that glowed like molten gold. The assembled warriors fell in behind him, dozens of wolves forming a living tide of fur and muscle and righteous fury. They ran. Through the palace grounds, across the territories, into the wild lands where civilization gave way to primal forest. Thor led them at a punishing pace, pushing his people to their limits because every minute counted, every second brought Cassandra closer to death. The incomplete bond throbbed in his chest like an open wound, pulling him toward her with magnetic intensity. Hold on, he projected through the bond, not knowing if she could hear him but needing to try. I'm coming. Just hold on, Cassandra. The Blackwood Fortress loomed ahead after what felt like both an eternity and an instant, its dark spires cutting into the night sky like accusations. The outer perimeter guards barely had time to sound the alarm before Thor's forces crashed into them. The battle was swift and brutal. Thor had no patience for prolonged conflict, No mercy for those who'd taken what was his. He cut through the defenses like a force of nature, his jaws closing around throats, his claws rending flesh. The rational part of his mind that usually governed his actions in battle had vanished, replaced by pure instinct and need. His wolf had taken control, and it wanted only one thing: their mate. Alpha Ronan's forces peeled off to handle the western guards. Celine's pack broke toward the eastern tower where Freya was held. Thor barely noticed, his focus entirely on the central keep and the ritual chamber Marcus had described. The magical wards sparked against his fur as he breached them, but Thor's own power, ancient and absolute, shattered them like glass. He shifted back to human form as he entered the keep, needing hands to open doors and navigate corridors. A guard tried to stop him. Thor's fist connected with the man's jaw, and he went down without a sound. Another appeared from a side passage. Thor dispatched him with ruthless efficiency, not breaking stride. "Your Majesty!" Celine's voice echoed through the stone corridors. "We have Freya." Thor didn't slow, but relief coursed through him. His sister was safe, now for his mate. He found Freya and Celine on a landing, his sister looking pale but unharmed. Freya grabbed his arm as he passed. "Thor, the ritual chamber. It's deep underground, past the main hall. But there's something you should know. Later." Thor pulled free, already moving. "Get to safety, all of you." "The ritual has already started," Freya called after him. "I heard them talking. They began early because they knew you were coming." Thor's blood turned to ice, then to fire. He ran, taking stairs 3 at a time, following the pull of the mate bond that screamed in his chest. The main hall flashed by, then a narrow descending staircase, lit by guttering torches. The air grew colder as he descended, and he could smell blood and dark magic and something else, something that made his wolf howl with recognition and desperate need. Cassandra. The chains bit into Cassandra's wrists, cold iron inscribed with runes that dampened her wolf's strength. She knelt on the stone floor of the ritual chamber, her body aching from the rough treatment that had brought her here. The drug they'd used to take her from the palace had finally worn off, leaving her clear-headed, but trapped. 7 figures in dark robes surrounded her, forming a circle. Their chanting filled the chamber, words in an ancient tongue that made her skin crawl. At the circle's head stood Aldrich, tall and angular, with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. He held a ceremonial blade that gleamed with an oily darkness, clearly enchanted for its grim purpose. "The eclipse approaches," Aldrich intoned, his voice carrying over the chanting. "And with it, the end of a dangerous prophecy. You should have stayed hidden, little prophet's daughter. Your grandmother was wise enough to keep her power secret. But you let yourself be found, let yourself be used. Now your bloodline ends here." Cassandra said nothing, conserving her strength. Fear churned in her gut, but beneath it burned something else, a fierce, protective fury that had nothing to do with saving herself and everything to do with Maya. Her daughter waited at the palace, safe for now but needing her mother. Cassandra couldn't die here. She wouldn't. The chanting grew louder, and Aldrich raised the blade. "Your blood will break what should never have been prophesied. The old ways will remain. The hierarchy will stand. And your child—" "Don't you dare speak of my daughter," Cassandra snarled, her voice raw but strong. Aldrich smiled coldly. "Your daughter will grow up motherless, powerless, and forgotten. Just another bastard child with no place in our world. The prophecy dies with you." He moved toward her, blade gleaming, and Cassandra braced herself. But something stirred deep inside her, something that had been sleeping, waiting, gathering strength. Her wolf surged to the surface with unexpected force, and with it came more. Something ancient and vast and blazing with silver light. "Daughter of my blood," a voice whispered through her mind, feminine and powerful and impossible to ignore. "You are not powerless. You never were." Cassandra gasped as power flooded through her veins like liquid starlight. It burned away the drug's remnants, shattered the dampening runes on her chains, and lit her from within. She could feel it transforming her, not just her wolf, but something deeper. Her grandmother's mark on her shoulder blazed with heat, and she understood suddenly what it truly meant. The moon goddess's blessing wasn't just symbolic, it was literal, real, active. No, Aldrich breathed, taking a step back as silver light began to emanate from Cassandra's skin. That's impossible. The celestial wolf bloodline died out centuries ago. It slept, the goddess's voice corrected, speaking through Cassandra now, waiting for one worthy to carry it, waiting for the child who would need its strength to fulfill her destiny. Cassandra's chains exploded outward, links shattering like they were made of nothing. She rose to her feet, and power crackled around her in visible waves of silver energy. Her eyes, she knew without seeing, would be glowing the color of moonlight. Her wolf form, dormant since Maya's birth, roared to life, but changed, enhanced, made into something more than it had been. Maya awakened this in me, Cassandra said, and her voice carried harmonics that hadn't been there before. Bearing the child of prophecy activated what had been sleeping in my blood. You can't kill me, Aldrich, and you can't stop what's coming. Take her, Aldrich shouted to the other council members. All of you, now! They converged on her from all sides, but Cassandra moved with speed and grace that shocked even her. She ducked under one attacker's lunge, her hand coming up to deliver a strike that sent him flying across the chamber. Another came at her from behind. She spun and caught his wrist, twisting until bones snapped and he screamed. The power singing through her wasn't just physical. She could feel the ancient magic responding to her will, and when she thrust her hand forward, a blast of silver energy exploded from her palm. It caught two council members and hurled them into the wall with bone-crushing force. This is my daughter's legacy, Cassandra declared, facing Aldrich as the remaining attackers hesitated. Not destruction, but unity. Not maintaining the old ways, but building something better. You were so afraid of losing power that you created the very thing you feared. You made me strong enough to fight back. Aldrich's face contorted with rage and fear. He raised the ceremonial blade, dark magic swirling around it. If I can't kill you with the ritual, I'll simply cut you down like the dog you are. He lunged, blade aimed for her heart. Cassandra moved to counter. The chamber's massive door exploded inward in a shower of stone and splintered wood. Thor crashed through like a force of nature, his wolf's golden eyes blazing with fury and desperate relief. The incomplete mate bond that had been tearing at both of them suddenly flared to life, recognizing their proximity, demanding completion. And as Cassandra and Thor's eyes met across the ritual chamber, something extraordinary happened. The bond completed itself in a rush of silver and gold light that filled the entire space, blindingly bright and impossibly powerful. Cassandra felt Thor's presence flood into her mind, his strength and devotion and fierce protective love. And she knew he felt her too, her newfound power, her determination, her absolute refusal to leave their daughter motherless. They moved as one. Thor intercepted Aldrich's blade, his hand closing around the older Alpha's wrist with crushing force. Cassandra's silver energy wrapped around them both, enhancing Thor's natural strength, while his Alpha power grounded and directed her celestial magic. They were perfectly synchronized, two halves of a devastating whole. You threatened my mate, Thor growled, his voice reverberating with otherworldly power. You tried to kill the mother of my child, and you believed you would succeed? Aldrich struggled, but against their combined strength, he was nothing. The ceremonial blade clattered to the floor. The remaining council members backed away, their eyes wide with fear as they witnessed what the prophecy had truly meant. Not a child who would rule alone, but a bloodline that would create perfect balance, the Alpha King's strength and authority, paired with the Celestial Wolf's magic and wisdom. The prophecy was never about destroying the hierarchy, Cassandra said, her voice clear and strong. It was about healing what's been broken, about creating a world where power isn't hoarded but shared, where low-ranking wolves aren't disposable, where children like Maya can grow up safe and valued regardless of their birth. You're afraid of change, Thor added, his grip on Aldrich never loosening. So afraid that you were willing to murder an innocent woman and her infant. That fear has cost you everything. Aldrich's face had gone ashen. You can't execute me. The old laws... The old laws died the moment you attacked my mate. Thor's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. But I'm not going to kill you, Aldrich. That would be too merciful. Cassandra felt Thor's intention through their bond and nodded her agreement. Together, they channeled their combined power into Aldrich, not to kill, but to strip away what he valued most. His alpha power drained from him like water through cupped hands, his enhanced strength and authority and influence bleeding away until only a shell remained. When they released him, Aldrich collapsed to his knees. He was still alive, still whole physically, but his wolf, the source of his power and pride, had been reduced to nothing. He would live out his days as the lowest of the low, experiencing firsthand the powerlessness he'd forced on others. Take him and the others to the cells, Thor commanded as his warriors flooded into the chamber. Marcus was among them, his face tight with grim satisfaction. They'll stand trial for conspiracy, attempted murder, and treason. Let every pack in the territories witness what happens to those who threaten the innocent. The former council members were dragged away, and suddenly the chamber was quiet except for Cassandra and Thor's ragged breathing. They stood facing each other, the completed mate bond humming between them like a living thing. The silver and gold light had faded to a gentle glow that wrapped around them like an embrace. You came, Cassandra whispered, feeling tears prick her eyes. Always, Thor said roughly. I will always come for you, Cassandra, no matter the distance, no matter the danger. He closed the space between them, his hands coming up to frame her face with infinite gentleness. You're magnificent, watching you fight, seeing your power. Our power, Cassandra corrected, covering his hands with her own. I felt you in my mind, Thor. I felt everything. The bond. Completed itself, Thor finished, wonder in his voice. We're truly mated now, body and soul, bound together as the goddess intended. The tears spilled over, but they were tears of relief and joy rather than fear. I want to go home, Cassandra said. I want to see Maya. I want... Thor kissed her. It was gentle and fierce all at once, a claiming and a promise and a celebration. Cassandra melted into it, her hands fisting in his shirt, her newly awakened power singing in harmony with his strength. The mate bond blazed between them, and she finally, let herself trust it completely. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Thor rested his forehead against hers. Let's go home, he murmured. Let's go back to our daughter and start building the future you fought so hard to protect. Cassandra nodded, and together, hands clasped, bond shining bright, they walked out of the darkness and into their new beginning.